might seem crazy what I'm about to say.
Hello everybody from Las Perlas TV. As we promised, we have here Rick Blickstead, President and CEO of the Canadian Diabetes Association. Stay tuned with
I
us.
could go to space with the air, like I don't care, baby, by the way. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy.
Thank you, Rick, for your time and be with us today. As you probably know, we have launched a campaign, Lucha Libre Against Obesity and Diabetes.
Right.
And it has to be a lot with our community because a couple months ago, I went into your website and I read about the more target groups with this disease, and we are in there.
Yes, of course.
But we are aware that the diabetes is a disease and that is on the rise. By 2020 in Canada, there will be 1.9 million people diagnosed with diabetes. What role is the Canadian Diabetes Association playing to help reduce the number of people with diabetes?
Well, you're so right. And first of all, thank you very much for allowing me to speak to your community, and because it's a very important community, and as you indicated at the beginning, a community that is more susceptible than others to diabetes. So there are 9 million people who are either have diabetes or with pre-diabetes. And as you indicated, by 2020, that'll be 1 in 3 Canadians. Now, diabetes is one of the major causes of heart disease, stroke, amputations, kidney disease, blindness, and others. So what we're hoping to do is to ensure that we allow people with diabetes and prevent those with pre-diabetes from getting further complications. It's also going to be it's also a cost issue. It'll cost the healthcare system over $16 or $17 billion by 2020 to deal with diabetes.
Wow. How does the Canadian Diabetes Association identify which group of people are more in danger of getting diabetes?
Well, there are numerous research studies that show factually that people from the Asian community, the Latino community, the Afro-American, Afro-Canadian community are more susceptible to diabetes. The other is, of course, the rise of obesity, and we know newcomers coming to our country often go from a particular diet to what I would call maybe a more Canadian diet, and they are putting on weight, and as a result of that, the obesity factor is increasing in their communities, and that is going to be a huge driver of type 2 diabetes as we move forward. We are seeing type 2 diabetes in children now as early as 5 years old. First of all, obesity is on the rise from all parts of Canada, and there are a number of reasons for that. Some of them are socioeconomic. It's easy to tell people to eat healthily and vegetables, etc., but for many people they can't afford to eat as healthy as we would like. So there's what we would call a social determinant of health perspective to that. The second is that people are just less active than they've ever been, especially children. Anecdotally, you look at kids today, they're playing video games rather than playing out on the street, and that is happening more and more. The third part is, you just mentioned, people immigrating into our country. If you look at the United States, where food is less expensive, but you can get lots of it. Things like we've just supported, for example, putting calories on fast food menus, because people actually don't know that how many calories are in a Big Mac. You can have a Big Mac and fries, and that's enough calories for the day. But if that's what you need to fill your stomach, that makes it more difficult. So we have a number of things, almost a perfect storm coming together to help create this tsunami of diabetes.
According to the Canadian Diabetes Association, the Hispanic community is a high-risk group for developing diabetes. How does the Canadian Diabetes Association plan to specifically help this at-risk community to prevent diabetes? Like how your organization goes into communities? How we will find out about you?
Well, I think there's a few ways we're doing it. The first is to create better access on our website and with our materials. We have many of our brochures, of our information is done in Spanish. We also are involved with translating what are called our practice guidelines on diabetes for doctors into Spanish. So that's going to help the medical community, but it's also going to help people who come onto our website or into our offices. But your issue about being in the community is even more important. We're one of the few health charities that actually does programs and services. So we do research, but we also do programs and services. And we have chapters. We have a fantastic Southeast Asian chapter. And we put on expositions for that. In fact, on November 29th, we're expecting over 450 people to come to an exposition for information on diabetes. So what we're hoping is eventually that we can create a Hispanic chapter, and to do so, we would need basically some volunteers, and we would help them set up the chapter so that they help in their own communities. Because it's very important for us to be in the community dealing with people who understand their own communities. And so that's our outreach program as we move forward.
You answer my next question just with that one. Canada spends millions of dollars in diabetes treatment, but not as much on prevention. I had two questions about prevention planning. Are there enough diabetes prevention plans in place in Canada?
You're right in saying they spend a lot on dealing with people with diabetes, as they do with many other conditions. But you're even more right about how we're not dealing with prevention. And more now governments are moving upstream and saying, let's stop dealing with the condition itself and let's now talk about prevention. How do we, help people, even with us and our diabetes, how do we help people plan better, plan their meals better? How do we stop the obesity tsunami? And governments are now moving to it. There is a long way to go on prevention. And to that extent, we really need more money in prevention, and even Canadian Diabetes is going to be moving more and more into prevention.
And like groups like us, for example, organizations like us, that we've been working with the Hispanic community for the last 6 years. We know how to reach our people,
Right.
Besides to be a television program and be an alternative news. We reach up to 10,000 people a month. We're very big in our community and also in the Canadian society. How do you involve those groups? Like we approach this problematic, obesity and diabetes. How do you support them? How do you help them to actually be part of the community initiation?
Well, there's a number of ways we want to do that. The first is to help form and administer chapters in the communities. That would be associations of people in the Hispanic community who would be able to work with people with diabetes. And we actually have paid staff here in the office that helps people establish and run those chapters. Secondly, there's a greater involvement for us in terms of reaching. There needs to be a greater involvement in us reaching out to organizations like you. And I just really want to thank your organization, your station, for putting this on, because for us to get out and speak with people with diabetes in their world, in their culture, in their language is incredibly important. And so therefore, we are starting we're going to expand our community outreach program so we can do more in the communities, especially the ones that are at higher risk. And that's our priority for next year.
Well, Julian, you have anything to ask to Rick? He's actually living with diabetes.
Hi there. No, my question is more related to what we are doing right now, which is the campaign against diabetes, again, a lucha libre versus diabetes and obesity. So if you want to send a message to people living with diabetes, and also I would like to know what is next. What is the next hope? Like, is there any hope? Let's say for me as a person living with diabetes, what's the hope? What is next? What is going to happen? Are you working with the Juvenile Research Diabetes Association as well, and the government? And are we closer to a cure? That kind of stuff.
I mean, when you say it's going to be by 2020, 1.9 million people living with diabetes.
No, it's going to be over 11 million people.
11 million people.
Living with diabetes or at risk of diabetes. And there will be 4.5 million with diabetes.
And how do we help? It's like we are vision people with diabetes, more people with diabetes, and people ask us, so how are you going to prevent it? What is it else that we need to do?
There's a number of things that we've done. The first thing is about 3 weeks ago on April 7th, we launched the Diabetes Charter for Canada. This was the first time that this had been done in North America, and it's one of the only 3 in the world. And what it said was, here are the rights and responsibility of people living with diabetes, of governments, of employers. We want to reduce the stigma of diabetes. Almost 37% of people who have diabetes will not identify of having diabetes because they're concerned that their workforce may not understand the condition. And so what we're working at is first to get diabetes out, to get the awareness of diabetes out. Number 2, we've invested over $125 million on both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. And we're getting closer to alleviating the condition of diabetes, but at this point there's no cure. But there are treatments that can now alleviate the condition. We're trying to ensure that people with diabetes, that we postpone the harder complications. We want to make sure, especially if you have prediabetes in the prevention area, that you don't move into diabetes, because again, educating people about lifestyle, about exercise, about eating, because one of the things about having diabetes, as you well know, it is a 24/7 job. You are always constantly monitoring your diabetes, your glucose, wondering what did you eat, what didn't you eat, what do I have to do in terms of my insulin. So the more we can help people understand that and help their families do it, because if you have diabetes and you're in a family unit, they have to also be helping you, because your eating patterns may have to change. Your insulin levels have to be checked more. We've been working on things like test strips to make sure that people have enough test strips so that they can monitor themselves. So there are many ways that our first priority is to help people with diabetes learn to better self-manage. If they learn to better self-manage and have the tools to do that, they will have a better life. So things like, we just got approved in PEI after many, many years. They are now actually going to be paying for blood glucose monitors, because that's $8,000, to get a pump. So it's amazing the kinds of things that governments can do, but also that just people with diabetes can do. And there is a great deal of hope for people with diabetes. And if they would I would encourage them to come onto our website, sign on to the charter. You can put your name on our charter, and also become members of the Diabetes Association, because there's a wealth of knowledge that can help you do better, as well as keeping in touch with your diabetes education centers.
Well, thank you so much for watching us this morning. It has been a great educational talk right now for all our people out there, our Hispanic people. Where to find out, there's all information right here in this link. And please stay tuned for the next of Lucha Libre versus obesity and diabetes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you to Team Lucha Libres.
Clap along.